Hey guys, I know you know about Bitcoin and Ethereum. Here we're going to learn about a brand new blockchain just coming out. It's called Tupelo. It's perfect for a lot of scenarios where every other blockchain just doesn't quite fit. What if you could take the data that was in the public blockchain, put it in the wallet, and then have that data be totally verifiable? This sounds like a very subtle thing, but it's actually really useful for a lot of businesses. Let's go meet Topper and Stephanie.
Topper Bauer is the CEO of Quorum Control, and we're building Tupelo, a permissionless platform for real-world projects.
I'm Stephanie Mello. I'm the CMO of Quorum Control, and I've worked with Topper for the better half of, 13 years or so. So we've been building things a long time together.
Tupelo is a layer 1 protocol purpose-built for real-world applications. So Ethereum and other blockchains tend to focus on decentralized finance, which is a great use case. But the hype of blockchain has promised us all these other applications, which have been impractical to build, and Tupelo makes them practical.
It's built for developers that want to take advantage of the power of this technology in a really accessible way, a familiar way. There's not a lot of blockchain protocol that they need to learn to use the platform. It's meant to be very accessible, practical application of this tech.
Supply chain, data marketplaces, a gaming company, all building towards production now. Tupelo is purpose-built for these real-world applications. It takes into account things that are needed for all the use cases that are outside of decentralized finance. The three core differentiators of Tupelo is scalability, so it's fast. We're doing 300 millisecond finality with 250 transactions a second. It is easy to use, and it doesn't require you to learn a complicated smart contract language. And in fact, it feels a lot more like using an API to a developer. So things like set data, change ownership, you kind of make a call rather than having to deploy a smart contract and then send transactions against it. In addition, it allows flexible privacy. So it allows you to choose which data you make available to the world, which data you make available to only a small group of people, or maybe which you keep inside of your corporation. But meanwhile, you get the security of a public network and having all of your data descend from a trusted source, but have the access to reading that data application dependent. I think the supply chain is actually a really interesting one. This is something we learned from one of our builders. They tried to build on Hyperledger, and they tried to build on Ethereum. And on Hyperledger, they had the problem of getting everyone to agree to go into Hyperledger. And something that I think is overlooked a lot in the blockchain space is that supply chain is no longer chain, and you end up with a supply cloud. And even mega corporations are no longer the center of their supply chain. They're a part of this giant ecosystem, and they can't dictate technology to these even medium-sized players anymore. So getting everyone to agree on a consortium chain becomes really difficult. Now, what was not intuitive to me at the beginning, but was clear to them after trying, was that smart contracts end up with the same problem because the industry does need to come together, choose the set of smart contracts they're using, and then either they don't allow them to be upgraded, which has its own problems, or they require some party to have control over upgrading these smart contracts. And then you end up back with the same thing, that you've chosen a technology which is actually running a centralized service on a decentralized network. When we talk about Tupelo and we say ease of use and not having to learn a smart contract language, it's actually more than just the developer experience. It's allowing people to organically grow out their supply chain and let more and more partners come in.
One of the use cases that I think Tupelo handles really elegantly is in the mobility space with scooters. We have a scooter builder who needs to work with government agencies and regulatory bodies to provide trusted start and end data, and they themselves need trusted user data. And on Tupelo, because those live in their own wallets, the flexible nature of accessing that information is just much smoother than some of the other distributed ledger systems.
The flexible privacy of Tupelo allows the governments to access the same data set, but only have access to that beginning and end data. Meanwhile, the scooter company is maintaining a full trusted data set of all of the route data, personal information, and everything in the same trusted DLT system, so they're not they're not creating two different calls to put one here for the government, one here for themselves. And instead, they're using the flexible nature of Tupelo to provide the same amount of trust, but the government get access to some set, and the scooter company gets access to a different set. On a public system, you either end up with data that's useless because you have to do something extra, or fully public data. And as we all know, you can't put personally identifiable information on a public system, which includes even detailed route data. Flexible privacy on Tupelo is enabled because we have a unique data structure that we invented called a chain tree. The name says what it is. It's a combination of a chain of a blockchain of updates to that object and a tree of current state. And unlike other systems, every single object in the world is a chain tree in Tupelo. So you can think of, this table as a chain tree. My identity has a chain tree. Other pieces, every single object in the world has a chain tree. And because of that tree structure, what Tupelo allows is you to share parts of that tree with the world, parts of that tree with your consortium, and parts of that tree you could actually even keep private. But meanwhile, you're still using the public system. And then because every object is unique and not shared on a single blockchain, we end up with a whole bunch of interesting benefits that allow us to be fast and flexible. We don't have to do what's called total ordering, which is a really complicated computer science problem and something that all these blockchains have started to figure out. We don't have to do that. We have a much simpler problem, and that allows us to be fast and flexible. When I moved to Berlin and I started bootstrapping an information security business, but I was trying to anchor corporate compliance rules to a public blockchain. There's a whole bunch of interesting benefits you can get with that, but I started looking at all the chains that existed at the time. This is 2016, so everything from Bitcoin, Ethereum, there were some other esoteric high-speed ones like Nano, and I just realized that none of that was going to work for the business. And it was actually disappointing to me because I bought into the hype and I was like ready to use blockchain, and then I was like, actually this isn't going to work. So what I ended up doing is taking tech from blockchain, building that into the business, and moving forward with that. And then in about a year after doing that process, I said, actually, if we just rethink how we do blockchain for these kinds of applications, so not for everything, but for the non-decentralized finance applications, you could end up with a whole bunch of awesome benefits, from flexible privacy to faster speed to much easier to use and not have to do smart contracts. And so at that time, I tried to disprove myself for a long time, and I read white paper after white paper. Right as I was having that idea, my son was born. So I took a month off and actually read him white paper after white paper. So I like to say he has at least like an associate's degree in distributed systems. And then after that process, realized that I actually was onto something here. And I was bootstrapping that previous business, but realized this was actually a much bigger idea, and blockchain has so many moving parts to it, from community and marketing to finance to really deep new tech. And I needed to bring in a team and get some amazing investors on board, and that's when we started to do that process. And I went back and I found the best people I'd ever worked with before, and started to bring them in to make a solid team to address all the nuances of blockchain technology.
Topper wasn't just thinking abstractly about a problem that he had no hands-on experience with. He experienced the challenge of building with this technology, and it wasn't a technology problem, it was a business problem. So to me, even though I was new to the tech and I come from mobile gaming and there's lots of similarities, but it was still pretty foreign to me, and it was really exciting that we're in a place where we don't have to be part of this kind of future talk, mystifying language that we can use, plain English to talk about real problems, and we have this very real, tangible, practical solution, and that was a really exciting prospect for me.
The world is decentralizing, whether we like it or not. Things are moving away from centralized services and becoming more decentralized. I think that's probably clear to everybody. So companies used to own their whole supply chain, and now, Siemens works with 200,000 different providers per year. The old way of providing trust was to have centralized servers, SAP integrations, or various different SaaS providers, or paper invoices between companies. That's no longer going to work as we decentralize and work with more and more smaller players. DLT is the only technology that really addresses these problems because the politics of it, people need to come together and agree, as well as the counterparty risk, where if you're going to pick a smaller player or even SAP, you're going to have to integrate at all these parts, and then who owns that, who runs that, and how does my small shop even afford to do these kind of integrations? DLT as a trust and interoperability layer really unlocks that potential. And Tupelo is the only platform that addresses the nuance needed to actually go and do these systems. My utopian vision of Tupelo is that we are building the trust and interoperability layer for all business. If we can accomplish even part of our goal, we can reduce the search and acquisition costs for all goods and services. And if you can do that, then specialized businesses start to win in this world, which, lets more people love their jobs, lets the economy grow, and actually changes the economic incentives away from where they are today for data piling and manipulation of users, and lets a more trustful world develop. You can start using it
right now. You can start using it right now. And we have a developer onboarding GitHub site, and we've got lots of demo applications that you can walk through, but also we've got really sort of straightforward, we pride ourselves on the straightforward ease of use. And so if that's not your experience building, then, hit us up, because that's really important to us. But that's at tupelo.org, and that will get you into the developer onboarding funnel. You can start building in 5 minutes.
And our new SDK lets you build right in the browser and not have to even have set up backend servers. Something that Tupelo offers right now, we're a young network and we love to hear from the builders on there. And so what we've done with a lot of the builders, and which we will continue to do for the near term, is to work with you to architect your app. We will sit down, really dive deep into your use case. We'll work with you to figure out why DLT and why Tupelo, and figure out exactly, how many servers do you need, or no servers, and really go into it with you. Basically everything except the actual coding of the application. And we do that because we love to hear from you, and because it's great for us to hear those detailed use cases and can really inform our roadmap going forward.